The days are longer, the calendar is filling up, and I want to feel as good as this beautiful summer weather. That's why I've been loving Groons. It's one daily pack of gummies that covers my greens, vitamins, and minerals, and even has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber. So I don't need to juggle a complicated wellness routine on top of everything else. They taste amazing. They're easy to toss in my bag on the go. Plus, they're vegan, gluten free, and HSA, FSA eligible for reimbursement. Save up to 52% off with promo code podcast at gruns.co. That's code podcast at gruns.co.
We're back on another brand new episode of Wooden Sticks, and really looking forward once again today to another great hockey chat with somebody that I work with. I've had a couple of these already. I think back to that chat we had with Wes Walls. It's always a little different, right? Because most of the listeners haven't been behind the curtain, haven't been at the mess hall and had these intimate conversations through a wild season. I had that with Wes Walls, but we were still able to kind of get him into a different spot. I'll try to do the same thing today with Mark Parrish. And, you know, Mark Parrish has been there and done that in terms of great things in hockey, and played for a bunch of NHL teams, played for the Red, White, and Blue in the 2006 Winter Olympics, won multiple state championships for that dynasty that was Bloomington Jefferson. And that's kind of where our relationship starts. And so I've got a fun story to start the procession today. I'm going to take you back to when I was first just kind of getting out of college and cutting my teeth as a hockey coach. I went to the University of St. Thomas. I knew I wasn't going to be an NHL hockey player. And so, you know, my dream at that time was to be a hockey coach. And when I went to St. Thomas, I got a degree that would cover on the teaching side, physical education and health, K through 12, and along with a coaching certificate. I had a minor in sports broadcasting because that was always in the back of my mind as an option. But when I got done at St. Thomas, I coached for a couple of years there as a grad assistant, did my student teaching. And my first big break was in 1993. I got hired to coach at Burnsville, my alma mater. And that was a big thrill. And, you know, we had some pretty good teams. I was a young coach. I was very naive. I was still learning the craft, to say the least. And this was in the height of Bloomington Jefferson's power as a high school hockey dynasty. Tom Satterdall, the Baby Blue, the whole thing. And so at that time when I was coaching that Burnsville team, I was a Phi Ed teacher at a Catholic grade school in North St. Paul at St. Peter's Grade School. And I did all their Phi Ed duties, their health duties. I did lunchroom duties, and I did the playground duty. And that was kind of the deal I signed. I got to have school lunch. And back then, you know, when you're just first starting out, the fact that you could just sit there and eat lunch with the kids and have a good time and run out to the playground and do that whole thing. You know, I was in my 20s, and that was kind of what I wanted to do. And I was having a blast. And they all knew I was a hockey coach. And of course, the floor hockey segment of our Phi Ed curriculum went a little long, a little less on the basketball, a little more on the hockey. You know the drill. But the bottom line was the kids all followed along. And back then, you know, it was before the internet. The newspaper kind of told the story, right? So I'm doing playground duty throughout that year. And our Burnsville team ended up having a pretty good season. And I won't bore you with the details, but, you know, we're in the same conference as Jefferson with Mark Parrish. And we play them early on in our conference schedule in their building at Bloomington Ice Gardens, that iconic building over off 98th Street in beautiful, prestigious Bloomington. And we get our doors blown off. You know, the Jefferson fight song is very almost, I think, identical to the Michigan Wolverines fight song. And we got beat that night 9-2. And as the benches were set up inside big, the visiting bench was nearest the big scoreboard, which was nearest the high school band. And for Christ's sake, we heard that stupid fight song time and time again. Bum, 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 over and over and over. Mike Crowley was this defenseman that they had. He was the closest thing to Phil Housley I ever watched. He was an offensively gifted, great skating defenseman that just ran the show. I think that night he must have had, I don't know, 2 goals, 6 assists. I mean, he was just unstoppable. That team was loaded, and I mean loaded with Division I and future NHL players like Mark Parrish and like the aforementioned Mike Crowley, with the legendary Tom Satterdahl on the other side of the bench. I was very intimidated. I was a young, emotional guy, and it sucked to get beat 9-2. Well, we made some adjustments, and they came back to Burnsville, I want to say, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 weeks later for the second of our 2 conference meetings, and we decided that week in practice. We had a couple kids that could skate. Now, these kids couldn't score, but they could skate like the wind. And so we picked these 2 kids out, and we decided to shadow Mike Crowley. Now, shadowing big-time forwards, and we did that against Matt Cullen, who played for Moorhead and actually beat Matt Cullen in a holiday tournament at the old St. Paul Civic Center by using these 2 kids to shadow Cullen. So it's a little later in the year, and it's just after the holidays. Let's just try shadowing Mike Crowley. And we do, and it kind of works. Now, they end up beating us in our building 4-3, but it's a far cry from 9-2. And the hard part for us is we knew at some point we're going to likely play them again come section time. And sure enough, you page forward another 6-8 weeks, and this is at Mariucci Arena in front of just short of 10,000 fans. We have arrived, right? This Burnsville team, I'm coaching. We're in our first year. Mike Luckcraft, who right now coaches the Northfield boys and is the head golf professional at Mystic Lake at the Meadows, one of my most dearest friends. We, in all our idiocy as rookie coaches, decide to not change the game plan. Now, a couple big mistakes we're making here as we get ready for this section final. Number one, we're going against Tom Satterdahl. So we're going against one of the best coaches in the history of Minnesota high school hockey. So that's mistake number one. Mistake number two, and this is the bigger mistake, is I still can't believe this as a head coach. We're going to play an Olympic-sized rink. And the shadow thing kind of worked at Burnsville, which is a much cozier traditional size rink. And so we already were playing against a stacked deck. Bottom line is it was a horrible game plan. And the final nail in our coffin was we had a senior defenseman that had broken his leg late in the season. A good part of our hockey team. We're going to miss him on the ice for sure. And we're already all wound up playing the number one team in the state, the defending state champions. And, we're big underdogs. We don't need a big fire and brimstone speech in that locker room. But like a complete moron, I get this kid on crutches in front of our team read this poem that he had written in honor of, his senior year and not being able to be here for this big moment in time for all of us at Burnsville. And he's crying. I'm crying. Half the team is crying. So if you look up mistakes you can make as a head coach, I made 3 of the biggest mistakes you could possibly make. Might not have made a difference as far as winning or losing, but to watch the way this game played out, I clearly look back now, 30 plus years in the rearview mirror, and know that I should have done some things a little differently. So we go out and we get our doors blown off. We get beat in a section final. I've never seen this. 10-1. And at the low point of this experience against Mark Parrish's Jaguars, we're down 10-0. It's running time in the third period. And we get this nice kid, good player. I'm not going to bring up his name. He scores a goal, and he's out there at center ice doing the Goldie Shuffle. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. We're going to celebrate. You don't celebrate a goal when you're down 10-0 in a section final, and that makes the score 10-1. So the game gets over. I've got all my family and friends there. Tom Osiki, who basically is my idol all my life, my head coach when I played, and a big part of the reason I went into coaching. We go down and, get down in the locker room with the team, which was heartbreaking. And you go out and you see your family and friends. And I bump into Coach Osiki, and he knew I was in a bad spot. And, he tried to pick my spirits up. But it was one of the most lowest points, you can have as a coach. So let's page forward to that was on a Friday or Saturday night. So now we go back to St. Peter's grade school on that following Monday. And I'm out doing playground duty, and I'm trying to forget about the beatdown my hockey team took on that prior weekend night. And in the middle of the kids running around, and, there's kids fighting, and there's, noses to be wiped and classes to be organized and teachers coming out to get their kids. And the fourth graders are out having a good time. And this kid comes running over, and his buddies are all kind of following behind him, like watching as if something's happening. And he says, Mr. G, Mr. G, Mr. G. I said, yeah. And I think his name was Billy. So what's up, Billy? He said, do you know what time it is? And I wasn't wearing a watch. And like I mentioned, there's no internet. I don't have a cell phone. This is 1993. And I said, no, I don't know what time it is, but the bell's going to ring soon, Billy. Just keep having a good time until you hear the bell. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. G. And he paused and he looked at me and all his kids are like giggling behind him. I thought it was 10-1. And I'm like, oh my God, I just got taken deep by a freaking fourth grader. I've told this story a couple times to Mark Parrish, and that's where our connection starts. And we've had years, I've covered him when he played for the Minnesota Wild. I've connected him with different charity events, and I'm lucky enough to work with him now at Bally Sports North. But when I look back at my brief 5-year coaching career on boys high school hockey in Minnesota on that side of things, I look back at that night in particular as the lowest of the low. And then that moment on the playground when I get housed by the fourth grader is a unique tie-in to the great Mark Parrish. So we're going to have some fun today. I can tell you he's got just a great way about him. And I really want to pick his brain on a couple of things, comparing Mike Crowley to the legendary Phil Housley, and then developing that skill that Mark has always had. If you watched him play, he was unbelievable in front of the net. Took a beating, but scored so many goals with his hands and creativity in that small space where those big rugged defensemen are. You look at Joel Eriksson-Ek now, and you see the success that he has. Well, that was Mark Parrish way before Joel Eriksson-Ek. So it's going to be a fun conversation. His personality is going to come out. He'll take us from Bloomington with the Jaguars to St. Cloud State and on the way to a bunch of teams in the National Hockey League, including playing for coaches like Peter Laviolette and Jacques Lemaire. That is coming up today on Wooden Sticks. Now, quickly, when people think of the Freemasons, they often think of the secret handshakes and unusual hats that they wear. And of course, they think of those pancake breakfasts. Minnesota Masonic Charities would prefer, though, that you think about the work that they do right here in our community. Places like the Masonic Cancer Center at the U of M, Masonic Children's Hospital, and the Masonic Home in Bloomington. They're just a few examples of the important work that the Freemasons support in Minnesota. As part of the largest fraternal organization in the world, Masons have consistently answered that call when it comes to charitable needs. I'm so happy that Minnesota Masonic Charities has chosen our podcast as a place to help spread that word right here on Wooden Sticks. Look forward to all kinds of great things coming here in future broadcasts, but thank you to the Minnesota Masonic Charity Organization. And also, summer's here. I've mentioned this last couple of weeks here on the show. I've been on the water a couple of times. I am very challenged when it comes to outdoor activity. I joke with my friends and family that I'm an avid indoorsman, but if you can become a member of a boat club, it will change your life. There's no hooking up the boat. There's no work at the dock. There's no extra gassing of this and fixing of that. You show up, you check in, you get in the water. Bay to Bay Boat Club wants to be your country club boating experience leader. It's time to get on the water. For 24 years, they've been serving and giving people the chance to enjoy Lake Minnetonka. Memberships are available now. You can call Bay to Bay Boat Club at 952-401-3880 or find them at baytobayboatclub.com. We sail on the show, and when we come back after this quick break, Mark Parrish here on Wooden Sticks. All right, welcome back to Wooden Sticks. Kevin Gorg, now happy to be joined by one of my cohorts at Bally Sports North and a longtime friend of mine. He is Mark Parrish, formerly of the Jefferson Jaguars, St. Cloud State Huskies, and a bevy of National Hockey League teams, which includes our favorite team, the Minnesota Wild. And I can't wait to hear some of the backstories there. Pear Bear, welcome to Wooden Sticks, and I'm really looking forward to this because as much as I've talked to you over the years, I haven't really dug deep into some of the history. And I'm an anti-Jefferson guy, being that I'm from Burnsville, but I've made the exception because I love you so much.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I have made that exception for you as well, because I can't stand Burnsville either.
Even though we laid down the section final, you beat us 10-1, you still don't have any love for us.
Well, I mean, I appreciate you guys very much. There's a lot of appreciation. No, you know what? You know what's funny? funny. I was just talking to somebody. Shoot, I wish I could remember who I was just talking to. Eric Pagel. And we were talking about like growing up and the rivals. And I literally, when he asked us what ours growing up, it was Burnsville, man. We had battles. I loved playing Burnsville. Looking back on it, man, those were some fun hockey games.
Well, they say timing is everything. And I might have you to thank for part of the reason I've segued into the broadcast world here years ago. But, you know, my baptism to high school hockey on the coaching side started in 1993. I got hired as the head coach at my alma mater at Burnsville. And it coincided with, in my opinion, one of the greatest runs in the history of high school hockey. I mean, you were a part of those Jefferson teams that ran the table in 93 and 94. And that is exactly when I got my start as a high school hockey coach. And I remember we had good teams. Like we had, you know, legitimately good teams at Burnsville. And like a lot of teams in the Metro, we just could not compete with those Jefferson teams. And I guess for a good starting point here, let's go back to where it all began, you know, and, you know, youth hockey at Jefferson. You must have been a multi-sport athlete. You must have had other things going on, because I know you're a really good golfer and I know you're a really good athlete. So how did hockey become such a focal point for you as a kid?
Oh boy. You know, it's funny because, it was like you said, I played multiple sports. I couldn't wait. To be honest with you, hockey was my second sport. I like baseball. Man, growing up, I was a huge Twins fan. This is actually how Morno and I became really good friends, when we were kind of talking about how we both had similar stories, kind of the exact opposite, though. He grew up wanting to be a hockey player and ended up being in major leagues. I grew up wanting to be a baseball player and I ended up in the NHL. And so it was funny how, like my focus was on baseball, winter hockey. I loved it. Don't get me wrong. I love the competition. I've always loved the physicality of it. You know, seeing how many times you get knocked down, but how many more times you got to get back up. It's just, there's so many life lessons. Every life lesson I learned from hockey. And I've obviously grown to be my number one by far with a bullet. Yeah, suck on that, Morning. It's way better than baseball. You know, and so when I was growing up, like we played a lot of hockey and we were good. You know, I remember growing up, you know, all the youth stuff now, realizing all the rivalries that started way back when. I mean, I didn't know who Matt Cullen was, but I knew there was this little number 9 on Moorhead that always had the puck, and I couldn't stand him because we couldn't get the puck from him. And sure enough, it ends up being one of my best friends, Matt Cullen. For God's sakes, that was somewhere down the road. You know, so it was funny, and all of us at the same time, we all played 3 sports. Like I couldn't wait to put the hockey bag down, pick up the baseball bag, and it was the same thing at the end of the summer. I couldn't wait to put the baseball bag, my bag down, so I could pick up my hockey bag, and that's just kind of how we just played sports. I guess growing up, my brother and I, we never really were a baseball player or a hockey player or anything. We just loved playing. We played football. We played everything they could. I even tried soccer. That didn't quite take. It didn't translate all too well. But no, so we tried them all. So we just loved playing sports. So we didn't really think of ourselves as hockey players per se until we got older. And it wasn't until I kind of considered myself a hockey player, honestly, until I got to high school. When I got into high school, and you know, the Bantams, obviously watching the 92 team, win a state championship, growing up watching the 89 team win a state championship. I was a little young for the 81ers. Sorry, Steve Bianchi, but you know, I was a little bit young for that crowd. But you know, I grew up just loving that and wanting to be part of the Kings that were in my mind, the Bloomington Jefferson varsity team. I fell in love with the color baby blue very early on. I always thought it was the coolest color to wear when you go into a town like Elk River or Burnsville, and they're black and yellow or black and red, and their fans are all over you and they're giving you crap about wearing baby blue. There's nothing like beating the crap out of a team wearing powder blue. It's fun. It's fun.
You're right. There is something to that. And it became an iconic hockey sweater in this state. And a lot of that revolves around the success that all these teams have had during the 80s into the 90s. Tom Satterdon, I mean, legendary coach. So you played youth hockey with all these players on these rosters: Ben Clymer, Mike Crowley, Mike Anderson, Joey Bianchi, Ryan Treble. So Pee-wees and Bantams, were you guys just rock star teams? Did you guys never lose when you guys were in youth hockey?
I would love to say that, but I did not win a state championship until I got to high school. There was,
really?
we had a lot of pressure. I mean, because the teams around us, I think it was the 92 year. I think it was 92 or one of the years we won high school, Bantam, and all we were missing was the Pee Wee state championship. And of course, we were the Pee Wees that year that didn't win the state championship. But like you said it, all those names, we grew up together. I mean, when we look back and talk about the teams, and we love to, reminisce a little bit about the fun times in high school. But when we get back together, we're talking about when we were like kids. That's the real special part for us. Was that we literally grew up playing on the ponds with each other. We're playing on the rinks, and whether it was me being a couple years younger than Nick Checo, that didn't matter. My brother was, his age. So we played with all those guys from such a young age, even from Dan Treble. You get into that 92 group from such a young age, and everybody was always so welcoming. It didn't matter what age you were. If you were Bloomington, if you were you want to come out on the pond, everybody was very welcome. You come play with us. As soon as you can keep up, you come on out and play. So those are the things that we really reminisce on. And yeah, I felt a lot of pressure, I would say, because of all the success of watching that Treble and the Crowley and the Checo group and the Bianchis, all those guys in front of us. Those guys were the ones that did not lose. They went, I think they went their Bantam year, they went 63-1. They ended up losing in the national championship game to a Michigan team that they beat early in the tournament and literally called to get backups. We're like, no, we need more to play this team. And then they came back, and I guess they thumped them pretty good either way. But that was how good that team was. So we always felt like we were like in that shadow. That team was winning state every year, dominating like 1 or 2 losses a year. I mean, it was just insane. And here we are, the group behind, like, are we supposed to be doing that? Because that's really incredible. I mean, we're good, but that's unbelievable.
I think of, growing up in the Twin Cities, and whether it's hockey schools, going to watch big games when I was a kid, I didn't miss the biggest game in town. I think of 2 rinks. I think of Braemar Arena, and I think of Big. I think of Bloomington Ice Gardens. These were rinks where when you walked into those facilities, it felt like the game was the biggest game in town. And for you, do you get back there? I mean, I know you've got kids that play. I know you've coached at the high school level. But when you walk back into that Bloomington Ice Gardens, does that sometimes just take you back? Because I love walking in that building.
Gorgie, every single time. Every single time you just asking me this question gave me chills, buddy. I love that rink. There's that rink was so special. And yeah, there was something about, we knew we were going to get the best. I mean, when we were in high school, we knew we were the best. So every game to us was the most important game. Never really, I hate to sound arrogant, but we didn't look at a rival or anything like that. Is every single game we played, we were going to get the other team's best, so we had to be at our best. So we had that focus literally from day one. From when you're a sophomore, even when I was in JV, you felt that same thing. Like you were going to get everybody's best, and we did. And so it just, I mean, watching that, thinking back, I get caught up on the old BET, Bloomington Entertainment Television, man. Bloomington Channel, BEC. Sorry, pardon me for that one. Bloomington Education Channel, and they would show our games. And Mark Hultgren, the old voice of the Jaguars, I still would watch some of those games, and we'd have them on. Up through I was playing in the NHL, and I would still watch some of those games because they were just so exciting. The fans, the enthusiasm. Eric Pagels, a great friend of mine out here, lives out here where our kids go to school together. And he was on the Minnetonka team with Brian Urich. And we constantly talk about the first game of the year, my senior year, 1995, was such an amazingly fun game. The crowds were just jam-packed. Everybody's all over everybody. We had a sophomore goalie that was in net. The score was like 10-8 or something. There was literally 3 guys that had hat tricks. 3 guys. I think it was me, Rico, and Brian Urich all had hat tricks in the game. It was electric. It was one of the most electric hockey games I'd ever played in my life. By far the most up until then. And then we're talking including the state tournament. Like that game was literally one of the most fun games I've ever played. And it's so much fun that we still talk about it. And Rico and his kids still go there and they see my picture on the wall, and they'll take a picture with it and send it to me. Or my daughter played Bloomington Jefferson this year for Orno, and it was the weirdest thing walking into that building wearing red and blue. And I'm sorry to admit that, sweetheart, and all you Spartans, but man, I mean, that baby blue, I still feel like I bleed that color. similar. And,
For sure.
going into the building, just you literally, the smell of it, Gorgie, everything. I loved going into the locker rooms. It's just, good old song "Glory Days" comes on every now and then in my head, and those are the ones that, man, I cherished every second I had there, and I love to go back and relive it. Obviously,
Yeah, it was a magical building, and the other magical building, and I always look back with nostalgia when I walk into the Xcel Energy Center because I know what was on that property before, the Civic Center with the clear boards. And I was looking at some pictures online this morning of your championship teams in 93 and 94. And specifically, I was looking at a team picture on the ice of you and your teammates in 1994, and you're all holding up three fingers for the three-peat. And that had to be you talk about playing with pressure. And, the year that I played at Burnsville, we were ranked number one most of the year, but we were not the defending champions. We had never won a championship in Burnsville. So it's a different kind of pressure when you're playing in Bloomington for the Jaguars and Tom Saturdahl in 1994, and you're not only playing with a target on your back, everybody hates you throughout the state of Minnesota, and you end up winning a championship. How much of that celebration was, again, you had done it before, was like, oh my God, we did it, but how much of it was, oh my God, we didn't screw this up?
oh my God, so much of it was relief. Honestly, you felt so much pressure to keep it going. Like the guys, Crowley's a little different, and Bianchi, they'd been there before. They were part of that 92 team. So they had kind of been here through it all. They had a different kind of confidence about those two, which was amazing. And I think we fed off that. Big time, because we just kind of came in. We were kind of the sophomores. There was only a couple of us that were carrying over from the 93 team. There was a pretty big transition over to that. And man, that's all I remember. It's like, we have to win to keep this going. We can't let the guys in front of us that started this, we cannot let them down. And all of us felt that, and even Crowley and Bianchi later on, they talk about how they felt it too. They obviously just handle it much better, and we needed that, thank God, in '94 to just help settle the room down, because it was amazing with those guys. I was the 93, I was completely scared to death my whole time. I was a sophomore, and it's like a rookie. It's like your rookie year. You're just focused on staying in the league, fella. You know what I mean? Like, sorry, we'll worry about the team next year. I'm focused on me now. And 94 was just so much different, getting a big part of it. And I remember going through the state championships tournament and the quarterfinals and then the semifinals. It was nerve-wracking as hell. Those games were the most intense, pressure-packed games. When we got to the championship game, it was unbelievable, the feeling that morning. Like when we walked in, whether it was Bianchi and Crowley just being loose as can be, it was almost euphoric before the game even started. It was like, oh, whatever, we've made it. We've made it to the last day. Now we just got one more game. No big deal. We just, no big deal. We just got to go take care of Matt Cullen and the Moorhead Spuds, for God's sakes. But and thank God for Jeff Heil standing on his head, because, oh my God,
he was phenomenal, Perry.
Oh, unbelievable. He was a player of the tournament. Without him, we'd have lost that game. Cullen, he stopped Cullen. It felt like a dozen times, point blank.
People forget that. Like I look at your roster, and it's littered with not only Division I players, but NHL players. But people forget how good Jeff Heil was. He was a tremendous goalie. And I remember that tournament vividly, because when you were done as a coach that year, there was a meeting that we had down there in St. Paul, and we went to all the games. All the coaches were down there, and I watched him, and I was just in awe of how good that kid was.
Yeah, he was, he almost got kind of screwed a little bit, because Randy Keppel in front of him as a senior. He didn't do anything wrong. He was winning every game. What are you supposed to do? But, and even Randy will tell you this, he knew he wasn't the better goalie. Jeff was the much better goalie at that age. He kind of got stuck in that buzzsaw of what we had as a team. And some guys did, where if you didn't really completely rise to the top, or if you just got stuck behind somebody, there just wasn't room to play. And thankfully now, thank God, it's how it was back then, and we all hung together. It was all friends. There was not this, oh, well, we're going to go to another school then. Like, because, where would we be in 94 without Jeff Heil? Oh, my God. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, because I'm old enough to remember watching Phil Housley, and, I'll never forget, at that time, it was Wakota Arena. It's now Woog Arena. And you had to get there for the JV game if you wanted to watch the varsity game, because the fire marshal would shut it down. It'd be full. You couldn't stay and you couldn't get in there just going at 7:00. So I watched Phil Housley go from playing high school hockey straight to the National Hockey League. You know personally how difficult that must have been. And I looked at Mike Crowley, and I was coaching against him. You were playing with him during this era, and he's the closest thing I've ever seen to Phil Housley. I know that injuries played a significant role in how short his pro career was and maybe how limited he was as a pro. In your eyes, Mark, how good could Crowley have been as a professional defenseman?
Oh, man, with the rule changes especially, unbelievable. He'd be a household name in the hockey world. Yeah, I remember, and because I remember when I first signed in Minnesota, of course, Gorgie, my first question to Jacques Lemaire was, "Hey, was Crowley going to make the team?" You know, because I knew he'd done pretty well in camp. I knew he was playing pretty well and everything, and kind of heard through the grapevine. And Jacques just stopped in his tracks. He couldn't wait to come back to me and rave about how good of a hockey player Mike Crowley was. So yeah, it would be safe to say he would have been an incredible NHL, because he came in, like I did at the end when we came into the NHL. It was still, how great. Like they were telling me, like, you need weight. Put weight on. We want you to be sturdy in front of that net. They didn't care how long it took me to get there. They just wanted to have enough weight so when I could fight with Scotty Stevens and these big guys, I had enough weight to handle them. Well, that was how they were looking at guys. I mean, I remember drafting guys. They were drafting monsters with zero talent whatsoever, going, well, we can't teach size. And that was so much the focus. The rules were so much on the defensive side, and big, strong, burly guys that could literally just grab on you and hold you. Well, that's not even remotely close to Mike Crowley's game, and it's not even a good hockey game. Thank God that they realized that. The game itself is way better, but unfortunately, he kind of got caught up a little bit in that. So there wasn't, he was that puck-moving defenseman that they were kind of looking for. And then all of a sudden the rules changed, and you look at like a guy like Jason Blake and these young guys, these little guys with skill, all of a sudden just shot up in the ranks in the NHL because they're finally calling the right rules. They're calling it on the defense and letting the offense play. And I can only imagine, because playing with Mike Crowley was the two best, minus just a couple guys in the NHL, but through my life, two of the best passers I still to this day have ever played with, minus like a Ray Whitney and a couple of excellent passers I played with in the NHL, Dimitri, guys like that. Matt Cullen and Mike Crowley are my two favorites, like easily. Okay. They put it was the Cully could find any little seam to thread that puck through, and Crowley would make a lane. He had the patience and poise. He was truly a quarterback on our power play. It was get the puck back to Crowley, and he'll try and get open. And when he gets it to you, you better be ready to shoot, because it's time to shoot. Like, he ain't giving it to you to give it to somebody else. He truly was. It was so much fun, especially I got to watch him be in that low corner and mainly in front of the net. I kind of played that same game my whole life. I got to sit there and watch him just patrol that blue line with the puck, man. It was truly an honor. And some of my greatest memories were getting a chance literally to play with Mike Crowley. I remember when he broke Housley's record, and I think I congratulated him 800 times. I think I annoyed him because I was just so Phil fucking Housley. He plays Phil Housley. Like, come on.
Yeah, I got to tell you, coaching against him was one of the scariest propositions in the world. In one of the games, well, actually, in a couple of the games, we actually tried to shadow him, and that was unthinkable at that time. But he was so much the engine that made that monster go. And you guys I rattle off those names. You guys had talent up and down that roster, but to me, he was the key to the whole process. He opened up the rink for everybody, and he is the best pure skating defenseman that I have ever watched with my own two eyes. That guy was remarkable, and I don't think people realize outside of Minnesota just how special Mike Crowley was. So let's get back to how special you were, because you leave Jefferson.
I ain't talking about Crowley.
I know you do, but how do you end up at St. Cloud State? And what other choices at that time were you sifting through? Because I'm certain with the exposure you got playing at Jefferson, you probably had some options. How did you end up at St. Cloud State to become a Husky?
Well, it's kind of funny being and talk about a Jefferson pipeline. There was a lot of pressure for Jefferson guys to go to the University of Minnesota and play for the Gophers. Now, luckily enough for me, I didn't grow up a Gopher fan. I grew up a North Star fan. I wanted to play in the NHL. That was my dream. And now that was, of course, after a couple other dreams luckily came true, because I never thought I'd ever play a game, or get a chance to play varsity in Bloomington Jefferson at the Civic Center and win a state championship. So there's, it's kind of relying on a couple of dreams. I've been very, very lucky. And so once I kind of got to that and I started getting exposure to colleges, that same thing, at the same time, the NHL kind of comes around. The scouts are talking to you. They're starting to feel you out for the draft coming up. So literally, as soon as I started getting talked to scouts from the NHL, that was my focus. I went, wait, I can go to D1, but do you guys think I can go where? So yeah, that literally changed my focus from dream of being a college hockey player, which of course was a dream, and playing in the WCHA. I mean, Matt Cullen and I were geeking out our first game in St. Cloud when we had the WCHA patch. Honestly, God, that's a true story. We were geeking out before our first game. We're fucking playing in the WCHA, giving all that stuff. And so trust me, there's a lot of dreams that before this one came true, and I've been very lucky. And so when I went to Minnesota, I hate to sound arrogant, but I kind of just expected them to recruit me like they're recruiting Mikey Anderson. They've got Crowley. They've got all my buddies that I played with, excuse me, that I know of, that know me, that we've grown up with. So I was kind of expecting it. And then when I went in to a meeting with Doug Woog, with my dad, and he went on about a 2.5-hour rant about how I wasn't a big enough centerman, which I wasn't. The only reason I was a centerman my senior year is because either me or Mike Anderson had to, and I lost the coin flip. And that's why I was a centerman. So I kept trying to tell him that I'm not a centerman. I literally just had to that senior year. I'm a winger, and it was this and that. I couldn't keep up on the Olympic size sheet, and all I had going for me was my shot and everything. So luckily, I'm glad I wasn't a go. Thank God I didn't grow up with like dreams, the gopher stuff on my wall, because I would have been crushed after
right. Exactly.
I would have been crushed. I mean, and luckily my dad and I looked at each other and we walked out of his office and we're like, well, I guess that one's off the books, huh? Like we don't have to worry about that one.
I didn't know this story at all.
Yeah, and Billy Butters came chasing out after, and he was like, hey, give me a week or whatever. And I was like, no, the head coach just said enough. Like, he doesn't know a damn thing about my game. I'll look somewhere else. Thank you, Billy. And I love Billy. He's a great man. And I love Doug. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing against Doug. I have a ton of respect for Dougie Woog. I love the man. I grew to love him even more for the last years and everything. I do love Doug Woog. So I don't mean to get to offend Doug Woog, but in a way,
these are just the facts.
Yeah, this has just happened, right? So, and the funny thing is Matt Cullen had the same exact thing happen to him. Doug Woog said the same thing, except for he had great passing and great hands, but he couldn't skate and he wasn't a big enough centerman playing the WCHA. And so we were like both like, oh, okay. And so at that point, I just shift focus on, okay, where's my best chance to play? Where am I going to play? And I went to Miami, Ohio. I went to Denver. I went to North Dakota, and I liked North Dakota. I was actually really close to going to North Dakota. But then I went and met with Craig Dahl. I went with St. Cloud. I liked the area. I walked into the rink. I of course went in the wrong door because I never know where I'm going, and had to go through the Zamboni entrance, and the whole rink was dark, and there was just a spotlight right on the CST, right in the middle ice, and I still remember it, and it just kind of gave me chills. It felt like home. It felt like home. It felt comfortable. It was something about it. I walked down the hallway, and this was our final recruiting visit I actually had was with St. Cloud too. And Matty Cullen and Ryan Frisch were on there. And I met with Cully for a little while, and we were talking about the school. They had lost like 11 seniors. I mean, they had to play us. They were in a position where they didn't really have a choice to play us. We liked Craig Dahl, absolutely loved Tom Serratori, who coached the forwards. I went to lunch with Tom Serratori. Dahl, of course, took Cully, and literally after lunch, I told Serratori, I'm like, I don't need to see anymore. I'm coming here. And he said, what? And I said, no. I said, I don't have to see anymore. I'm coming here. And I think I remember told him, I was like, I'm tired of the recruiting visits. I'm just like, I want to come here. This is good. I remember I went back and he's like, all right, CD. Tom's like, hey, CD, Barry's got something to tell you. He's like, I was just like, yeah, where do I sign? I want to come here. And I remember Cullen's jaw hitting the floor, and it's CD. And literally, I did what I had to. I don't know if there was any letter of intent I had to sign. I can't remember any of the real details, but I walked back to my car and drove home. And I think I went to a dance that night with my high school girlfriend.
What a great way to celebrate.
Right? Why not?
Yes.
Why not?
Well, and when you're there, you mentioned the WCHA. It's in its peak. Like that conference, top to bottom, was the best conference in college hockey. And those years, Pear Bear, set you up for success for your ultimate dream. So looking back, you made a good choice. And how good was it to have every Friday and Saturday night that college weekend of hockey to look forward to, where it was the best of the best? How much did that set you up for being a pro?
Oh, I think big time. And what I liked about it is it continued that feeling I had from high school. Every game was so important. I mean,
yes.
The standings, everybody was so tight. There were so many good hockey teams back then. Minnesota, North Dakota, I think, tied for the league championship. We took third because that's how close it was. And we were only a couple behind, and CC was only a point behind. I mean, it was just so much fun to play in that league at that time. We truly felt, and it was funny because we felt and knew we were the big boys in the nation when Cully and I would go to the World Juniors and stuff. And it was funny how every other conference would sit there and rip on the WCHA, and we're like, we don't rip on you guys. Why you guys always got? And we realized that, because we freaking own them, because the
right.
WCHA was the biggest league at that point. And want to talk about a heartbreaking thing when not just me, but all my buddies that played in that league, when that thing got disbanded, it was
I know.
Well, that was a gut punch like nobody's business. We couldn't believe that of all leagues, how can that one, blow up? That time will heal, and the Big Ten will become what it is, and the NCHC somehow has spun off and been incredible out of it. Talk about
become the best conference in college hockey,
smelling like roses, right? Like, holy cow.
Well, then you're a kid that grew up playing hockey in Bloomington and dreamt of playing for the Jaguars. You go on to play D1 hockey. I don't know what this experience is like, but out of the hundreds upon hundreds of players that were available in 1996, you're picked 79th overall. And that day, I can't imagine, Mark, what that experience was like, to realize that not only was I picked, but I was picked fairly high. Like, these folks, these professionals that scout for a living, think that I can play in the National Hockey League. That day had to be extraordinary for you.
Unbelievable. It was, it was so much fun. Going down to St. Louis, myself, Josh DeWolf, fellow Jaguar, Matty Cullen was down there. There was probably a handful of Eric Rasmussen. Eric Ras went 7 overall to Buffalo. So there was all kinds of excitement going down there for us. We were excited to see where Ras was going to go, in the top 10. Cully, I think, was the next, and I think he was the first pick of the second. So and we were all kind of sitting, right next to each other with our parents. So it was a fun day. And I did start getting nervous because Lawton, I love Brian Lawton as an agent, my representative. He has never bullshitted me once. He has been straight as an arrow, and that has carried through some more stories we can get on to later sometime. But he told me you're going to go somewhere between the second and fourth. And, kind of ideally you wanted to be in the top 3, because that's kind of, but top 4, especially, that's when as long as you're in the top 4 rounds, you're going to get a good enough look, but top 3 ideally. So I was kind of getting nervous. But the one thing I wasn't getting nervous about is I knew Colorado was really high on me. They were really excited. I knew they were really high on me. And since they won the cup, they had the last picks, or last pick or 2 or whatever it was at that time, and so in the later rounds, I would get more excited. Like I wanted, so I the first pick of the second round, that was awesome that Cully got it, or DeWolfie got it, one of them or 2, I don't know, but every time Colorado would come up, I'd get excited. So that third round, I was really hoping. I was like, man, come on, Colorado. I really wanted to make it into that third round. I don't know why. I don't think it would have mattered. Obviously, looking back on it now, it wouldn't have mattered if it was a third or fourth round. But at that time, it was a big deal. And yeah, when they picked, it was just, man, talk about euphoria. It was the same release feel I felt in '94 when we won that state championship. Like, oh my God, there it is. Thank God. We did it. Like they got it. Like we're in. And then, you're downstairs and you're meeting all the brass and the table and you oh shoot, I feel terrible. I can't think of the name of the scout that was unbelievable who picked me. Who was one of my biggest fans. I feel terrible. I'm so sorry. But no, he, big hug from him. And we get to go down and we're getting pictures for our cards if they're going to make them. You're feeling just as big time as you can. I mean, chest pumped up. I was 10 feet tall. I never felt so cool in my life. And then you afterwards there's an after party, and they just won the Stanley Cup, so our after party was with the Stanley Cup. I'm like, my God,
you gotta be kidding.
I was like, at that point I was almost like, do I even need to play in the league? Like, if I already I got drafted, I got to celebrate with a cup. I'm like, my God, this is unbelievable. And it just kind of went from there, and that's where that focus, from that feeling, from that the being around the pros and being around the big guys and being on the same floor as all the hockey greats and the greatest hockey minds around, and seeing the Lou Lamoriellos that won a cup in '95 at the next table, that's where I wanted to be. I just knew at that point there was nothing that was going to stop me. I was going to get a chance to play in the NHL. I didn't know if I was going to stick, but I was going to play pro somehow.
And this is Colorado in the middle of their incredible run in the mid '90s. You mentioned they had won a cup, but you never end up playing there. How does that transform from being picked fairly early, 79th overall, third round pick, to them making the move? How did that happen?
Well, a lot of it kind of came from pressure from me, Lawton, and Mike Liut. The old Mikey Van Ryan rule that they called. When he went to college to juniors, that should have been named the Parrish rule, because I literally did it the year before. Liut and Lawton did it with me the year before, and it didn't gain a whole bunch of.
Tie into this, the old St. Louis Blues goalie.
Mike Liut's a genius. He's a lawyer, and he pretty much wrote the CBA. That's the CBA at that point. He was involved in the whole thing. So he's an agent at this time. He and Lotzie were cohorts, Mike ran Michigan, Lotzie ran Minnesota. I mean, they're the two biggest states in the country for hockey players. Like they had the U.S. hockey just cornered, and they did a great job with it. And when it came to developing us, everything they literally. I am so thankful I went with Lawton from still, and again for long reasons past that, but. So it really was one of these where after our sophomore year, sat down for lunch with Matty Cullen, and I'm like, hey man, like I just kind of want to know if you're thinking about signing, or I'm kind of getting talked to from Colorado, and I mean, if you're not going to be around. And literally he just kind of interrupted me. He's like, well, I'm actually going to sign in a couple of days. I'm going to Baltimore next week. And I'm like, oh, well, all right then. I'm glad we had this talk, because once he left, then I was like, who's going to give me the puck? I'm a shooter. I needed somebody to give me the puck, so I got a little nervous with that. I had some discussions with Lawton and Liut that summer, and they kind of sat me down and said, hey, how serious are you about playing pro hockey? And I said, that's my goal. I want to play pro hockey. And they said, well, if you really want to gain some big time attention being a Minnesota kid and going to college in Minnesota, we can go send you to the Western League. And there was literally no rule written about it. That's why Mike knew about it. There was no rule. So he, right when I went to, I was like, all right, let's do it. It was Seattle, which I absolutely loved playing in Seattle for a year. And as that year went on, Mike and Brian just kept telling Colorado that, hey, he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. So you better either sign him. And it was, and Brian's a genius again. It was his idea. I was not fond of it. So it terrified me. It was, each month I played out there, they were just going to raise my price, raise the contract. I make all in all, that sounds great, but I don't want to piss off the Colorado Avalanche. I want to play for them, you know? So he's like, no, he's like, you just trust us. This is how the business works. He said, they will trade you before the deadline. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I want that to happen either. But at the same time, it was, for my NHL career, they knew I had maybe a better chance of playing somewhere where they just didn't win a Stanley Cup as a rookie coming in, and
Good point.
So I ended up, I listened. I was like, all right, let's do it. I bought in, and I went to Seattle, and they just kept doing it. And Colorado would contact me every now and then with like, hey, no, we still want to sign you. We want to get this done. Just be patient. And then sure enough, before the trade deadline, I got traded to Florida, and wow. Brian was right on the money, and they turned around and signed me for like the third best rookie deal behind like Thornton and Samsonov or something like that for the time. As a third rounder, I mean, I made out like a bandit. And thank God I listened to Mike and Brian, because it has worked out exactly how they planned, except for I didn't quite get my Stanley Cup. I'm going to have to complain to them.
Although you had some good teams you played for. I mean, I'm going to rattle off the teams for the listeners: Florida, Islanders, Kings, Dallas, Minnesota, Tampa, Buffalo. And, I look back at some of the coaches you played for, and to try to tie it into what we're watching right now, I look at Peter Laviolette as one of those offensive geniuses that is at his very best when he's got high-end talent to work with. Right now at the Rangers, I think of the team that they have led by Panarin and some of those unbelievably talented players. What a good fit that is. Well, you played for him not only with the Islanders, but also for the U.S. team in the 2006 Winter Olympics in Italy. How big an imprint did he make on your career as an offensive player, Mark? Because I think, Peter Laviolette is kind of that guy, right? The offensive side of the puck.
Yeah, he is. And the best part about it with Lavi is that he lets the offensive guys play. He wants the creativity. He wants our instincts. He wants you to play. I mean, that was I love playing for him for many reasons, but one of my first and all-time favorite reasons was when it was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 games into the season. I think we were 4 or 5 and we were doing really well, and we were sorry.
We can edit that out. That's fine.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, dang it, Nikki. No, so he let guys play, and he came to us in Carolina, and I was playing with Michael Pekka and Sean Bates, so I got a Selke winning sentiment. Couldn't have made my life any easier in the D zone already. And Batesy was a natural centerman too, so he wanted to play down low. So literally, it was one of they got in trouble if I played down low. If I was the low man in the D zone, we'd come to the bench and Laviolette would yell at those two. It was wonderful.
That's great.
He's not on there to do this. That's not his job. Like, see, and literally, he told me that game, and he said, as soon as you feel that they got the puck, as soon as we get the puck, I want you gone. And I said, say that again. As soon as one of these two get the puck in the offensive zone, I literally want you. I'm like, I love this man, and that was the great thing about it. With like he was again, like, to follow through this Saturday and that whole determination, the passion. His big thing was you got to bring it every single night. He expected you to go out there and earn your paycheck. You get paid to work as hard as you can, not necessarily win hockey games. You can't necessarily control all of that. But as long as you play this system, you stay inside this, you stick to the D zone. Obviously, he was a big time stickler with the D zone. He had a great mindset through the neutral zone and everything. And that was the best part about it, is we just felt free in the offensive zone. That we did. There wasn't any hindering. There wasn't, and no offense to Jacques, like, if you bring it up on your backhand and you're against the wall above the hash marks, you got to get it down below the net. You didn't have to think of something like that. You just got to go play hockey. And I mean, look at Panarin's doing. I mean, Zibanejad. I mean, it's incredible. And of course, with Lavi, it's, the focus is on the compete. And the focus is on the D zone, and he's got spectacular defensive players right now. He's got the best goalie in the playoffs with Shesterkin. I mean, literally, this has got to be. And it is funny for me. I can't believe I'm admitting this too in public, but I send Lavi and Pekka a text like, "Good luck this year, boys. Bring it home. Bring home the cup." Here I'm telling the Rangers to bring home the cup as a former Islander. I mean, they kill me hearing me saying that, but I love the guys so much. not surprising that Michael Pekka's right to his right while they're going through this. They had a great rapport as captain and coach. So it's not shocking at all to see those guys doing this well for the Rangers, because it was all the details. It was about winning the faceoffs. How are we going to go and win the faceoffs? Pekka would talk about winning the faceoffs. Those were the things that Lavi pushes hard on. He forced the minor details that are the most important ones, the ones that you make a mistake that lose you the playoff game. Those are the ones he focuses on. You guys are the skill players. You go score goals. If your power play isn't working a little bit, I'm going to come down and say a few things. But as long as everything's working, no, just like any coach. And he has a great offensive mind too. So that obviously helps as well too. You can discuss the offensive zone with him in depth. And that I enjoyed because he's a career defenseman. I didn't know how much he'd have to say about, actually scoring goals. And he's a true student of the game. And I love the success that he's had pretty much everywhere he goes.
And I look at your skill set and the way you played the game. And I was lucky enough when you were playing for your hometown team, the Minnesota Wild, to be one of the broadcasters. And I got to watch you many nights at ice level. And I've seen a lot of players that play in front of the net. And there is an art to what is done in front of the net. I look at you, I look at Zach Parise, I look now at Joel Eriksson-Ek. It's not an easy place to play, and you get the crap beat out of you on a nightly basis. For young forwards out there that want to work on that skill, because I do think so much emphasis this day and age is put on the skating, and I get it. It's a speed game, and that's all well and good. But I watched the way you were able to deflect pucks and get rebounds and make plays in those small spaces. For young players out there, how do you develop that side of the game?
Oh, get into the grind. I love battle drills. I loved battle drills. I loved the drills when we were going in, and I wanted the defenseman to compete with me. I didn't want him to cross-check me like Stevens or beat the living hell out of me like Danico, but I wanted the guys to compete with me so they could get used to it too, because there's really nothing you can do that simulates the battle besides getting in the battle and getting used to having a body on you. And the biggest thing, I got lucky. Again, Dino Ciccarelli, my idol growing up, I got to play with my first year in Florida. I mean, an absolute highlight of my life. Still have a bunch of pictures of me and him just sitting on the bench next to each other. I had the photographer. I was like, if you see us on the ice together anywhere near each other, take a picture. And so he was unbelievable. He grabbed me after practices and worked on, not just tipping and redirecting. He'd do that all the time, but like goal scoring drills in tight too. I mean, he'd put a stick through the net so it would make, just a little corner in the upper corner, and it would be just enough room to score a puck, just to get that puck in, but it wouldn't count if we didn't get it in there. So he had all these little games and challenges that constantly work on your game in front. There's little puck drills the pucks come from behind you. There's a ton of little small area drills. And that's the big thing, is that small area, getting used to playing, down low, making a play when somebody's on top, because that's the NHL game. It closes so quick. And like you said, the speed is very evident. I mean, the game has gotten faster. The game has gotten more skilled. The game has gotten better. But at its heart is still the battle. The game is 80% on the walls, in the corner, in front of the net. It's a battle. And so you got to get in the battles, and you got to, I enjoyed it. I hate to say it, but like Dano beat me up and threw me down. I'm like, well, got me this time. After I'll get you next time with a cheap shot. But that was part of the fun for me. I truly miss that. And I was very happy. I was concerned actually in 2004 as a player, that they were going to take that out of the game, because that's such a big part of hockey in my mind, that physicality and wanting it, just flat out wanting something more. You don't have to be the biggest, strongest. If you want that puck and you've got enough technique, if you're quick enough, you can make the play. And obviously, because I'm not that big of a guy and I had to go in the corner with these guys, that'll teach you to stay elusive real quick, by the way.
Yeah, I bet.
Very fast. You get hit by, I got laid out by Rob Blake very early on in my career. I'm like, okay, keep your head up at all times. I learned that, learn that lesson quick, but no, it was getting used to having somebody almost in control of your body, but keeping your hands free is the trick. You can take my body, cross-check me all you want, You know, you got to obviously be strong enough to withstand that, stay on your feet. But if you can keep your balance, you keep your focus, and you keep your hands free, you can get your hands on anything.
All right, we're going to close with this, and then we'll get to the hat trick hot seat with 3 quick questions to shut this thing down. But you've made such a cool transition, Mark, into the broadcasting world. I look at you on the Power Trip on the Fan, in the booth during the Boys State Hockey Tournament, NHL Network, all the work you do there, and obviously with us at Valley Sports North. And your passion comes out in every broadcast, and I just love that about you. Is this something you always had in the back of your mind, and how did this come to fruition? Because you absolutely, not all players are meant to be broadcasters, but you absolutely belong where you are doing this. And I guess, how much in the back of your mind as a kid and growing up playing in college and pro did you think this might be an option for you?
First of all, thank you, Gorgie, very much. Far too kind. You know what? I got to be honest with you. It was not on my radar at all. I remember as I was playing and I, did some interviews and stuff, and some people be like, "Oh, you'd be good on TV," and I was just like, "Yeah, right, it would be." I just kind of blew it off, and honestly, I always thought I was going to be a coach. I was thought I'd get into coaching at some point and do that, and I retired 2012. And I got asked to do Jimmy Rich called me up to do the St. Cloud broadcast, and I said, "Jim, thank you very much. I appreciate it, but I'm just gonna I'm gonna be retired for a little while, right?" And I hung that phone up, and my wife was staring at me with just the worst daggers in her eyes. I don't know if it was because she needed me out of the house or not, or she really wanted me to take that job. But either way, she's like, "You just said no to that?" And I went, "Well, yeah, I'm not really interested in that right now." And she must have, she called and told on me, because I got a phone call from Hedekin. I got a phone call from Kleiner. I got a phone call from Lawton. And they're like, "Well, have you ever thought about doing TV?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, I kind of thought." "Then what the hell are you thinking? Like, you can't turn this down. They're not going to call you back. They're not going to call you a couple of years from now and say, 'Hey, you want to do it now?'" And I went, "Okay, well, all right, I'll give it a whirl." And they talked me into it. So I called Jim Rich back and begged for him to forgive me. And it ended up being great. And what I realized doing it, especially, any of the analysts, but especially when you're doing color, that's as close to being right on the bench as you can get. I got into the games. I mean, there was some games after the game, I would be like sweating, or I'd be so excited, or I'd be so disappointed, and I had nothing to do with it besides I was just, calling the game. And I truly started to fall in love with it then. Jim Rich, it was quick. I should say I fell in love with it very quick, because that was without even knowing it. I mean, that's what you miss so much, that just being in there in that competition, obviously being in the room, being with the guys. And that is also what I love about this, Gorgie. Like, you guys are my team now. So my text chains have just changed, right? Like, they're just with you guys, and it's the same BS. We're still joking around about the same things, So it literally filled 2 holes that I didn't even realize I needed at the time. And thank God it was my wife first, and then my buddies that called me up and talked me into it, and Jim Rich and Brian Stanley at St. Cloud were absolutely instrumental in guiding me to where I am, the broadcaster that I am. They were awesome. They'd say, "Mark, you shouldn't talk that much. Mark, you need to talk more." Right. They taught me the ropes. I literally had no schooling on it whatsoever. And I'm glad I made my mistakes there. On the little bit smaller market. God knows my first couple of games were horrible, but I loved it. It was fun, and I couldn't wait to get back and do it again. And so it just kind of grew from there. And I've taken that advice of never saying no to a TV thing, at least trying it. And if you don't like it, you don't like it, you can move on from there. But I mean, from there, I've been so lucky now. I get to work the state tournament. I get to do the Wild. I get to do the NHL Network. I worked for the Islanders for a little bit. I mean, I've been so lucky again, to kind of, in my mind, I almost feel like I fell into it. I mean, luckily I listen to my wife. I'm going to say that.
She knows best, and you were meant to be there.
Yes, she does.
And it's so much fun. I love working with you. I'm not going to get over the top here. You're meant to be there. You're great at what you do, and it's fun to have you on our broadcast. And I love watching all the other stuff you do. And of course, the Power Trip's a whole nother animal. We don't have time for that craziness right now. I'll close with this. Hat trick hot seat, 3 quick questions. There's no wrong answer. We'll start with number 1.
All right.
high school, college, or pro, whatever time it was there ever a point when you were on the ice for a face-off or for warm-ups and you looked across the way and you were in awe of the player that you were going to be facing that night?
100%. Wayne Gretzky.
That's a big one. That's a big one.
First face-off I ever took against him. I made the highlight film the next day from Terry Murray. It was obviously an offense. It was on face-off. No way I'm being in a defense. It's on face-off and Wayne's out there. And so we're out the offensive zone, and we're to Richter's right, Mike fucking Richter's right. And it's one of my first couple of games in the league, and I'm just staring at Wayne. I'm standing on the right hash mark. I'm like, I'm 5 feet, 6 feet from Wayne Gretzky. And that's all I could think about. And I'm staring, and the puck dropped, and I was still staring at Wayne, and everybody else was moving.
So you were like all of us. We were just in awe so much we couldn't move.
Literally 100%.
I love it. That's a great story.
Get a little starstruck here, Perry? Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, I know you're a musical guy. I know you've been on stage. You've done some jams. The best concert you ever attended. I need to know who the concert was, and I need to know the venue. And I think of the places you played in your pro career, places like LA, places like New York, Florida. So I'm certain the options are endless, but the best concert you've ever been to, who was it, and what was the venue?
Oh, my Lord, Gorgie, you're testing me on this one. I've seen some unbelievable ones. I would think the one that blew my mind the most that I got to see live, because I never thought in a million years, was the Rolling Stones in Florida.
Yeah.
That just absolutely blew my mind. A Southern rock guy, so I love Lynyrd Skynyrd was a big one. Fleetwood Mac, and those guys. I would have to say the most fun, biggest concert I had been to was Nickelback with Shinedown in Kansas City.
I thought that's where you were going to go.
Unbelievable. It was unbelievable show. I'd never been to Kansas City, and I tell you what, somebody needs to get a hockey team in Kansas City, because there was unbelievable, and not the music. It was the people. I mean, it was loud, proud. There were people everywhere hanging off the rafters. They were having the time of their lives. I stopped there. It was just worked out where my buddy Johnny Vollen and I were driving me back from Tampa at the end of the year. And they were like, hey, we're playing in Kansas City, tomorrow night. And we're like, oh, you know what? We could swing through there. So we swung, and it was unbelievable. That was my favorite show. And I literally from there on, NHL needs to get in Kansas City. The building was spectacular. And I was pretty pumped too, because that was my first time getting to hear and meet Shinedown, who I'm a huge fan of as well.
Very cool. Have you seen the documentary that's out currently on Nickelback? It's phenomenal. Have you seen that yet?
I have not seen it yet, and I feel terrible because I've heard it's spectacular, and I can't wait to check it out.
Definitely do that. Final question. We're going to tie it into the Timberwolves somehow, some way, being that we're in Minnesota and we finally have a team that looks like they can make a run all the way to a championship. Charles Barkley on the post-game interview last night with Ant was asking about restaurant recommendations. And when I think of some of the glitzy places that you've dined in the Twin Cities, if Charles Barkley somehow got your number, somehow contacted you and your beautiful wife and said, I want to have dinner, I want you to pick the spot, where are you taking Charles Barkley to dinner this week as the Timberwolves get ready for the Western Conference Finals?
Not a question in my mind, Spoon and Stable. My boy Gavin Kaysen, the chef. I grew up with him. Literally, he was his older brother Sean Kaysen was my best friend. But Gavin, we were out in New York. We were out in New York, and we were hearing about this Gavin Kaysen that was big in the food industry. And I'm like,
such a good
no
dude.
Way. Like, no way. It can't be the same Gavin Kaysen. And sure enough, they sell these calendars out there in New York and all that restaurants. And it's fucking Gavin. And yeah. So I couldn't believe it. I love it. And he is just the best. Obviously, I love him to death for many reasons, but there is no doubt in my mind, Spoon and Stable is the best restaurant in the city.
I love that place, and I certainly love Gavin. And I have loved this conversation. I went a little long. I promised you 45 minutes. I went a little bit long.
Anytime.
My clock management was off today. Mark, thank you so much for doing this. I can't wait to see you over at K-Fan here in the next couple of weeks. And you're just the absolute best. God bless you, my man.
Oh, Gorgie, thank you, my friend. I absolutely love working with you. I love where this world has taken us and brought us together many years from when it started. And yeah, man, I could talk for hours with you anytime, my friend. Thank you.
the great Mark Parrish right here on Wooden Sticks. We'll be back after this quick break to close the show here on the Talk North Network. We're back on Wooden Sticks, and we did go a little bit long. So I like to try to keep these conversations to roughly 45 minutes. Mark and I can both talk, and he's so good. And really fun hearing some of those stories and going back in time. And, you know, if you had a chance like me to watch those Jefferson teams up close, they were just remarkable teams. Crowley, Clymer, Anderson, Peterson, Bianchi, Treble, Mark Parrish. They just were loaded top to bottom, and they had an incredible run. I think it was back to back 3 straight years, winning that state championship. Arguably the greatest run in the modern era. I mean, they were tough to beat, and it coincided with my start into coaching. And I think it had a lot to do, especially after that section final game where we got beat by 9 goals, to maybe segue me into women's college hockey, which I did in 1998 and did for a decade at St. Thomas before I started in 2006 with, at that point, Fox Sports North. And now Mark Parrish and I work together over at Bally Sports North. And, you know, you look at his career too, and he did play for some remarkable coaches. And I look at the way Laviolette handles the New York Rangers, who right now look like a team poised to maybe win a Stanley Cup, and going to be an awesome series against the Florida Panthers. I can't wait to watch that series. And, you know, the offensive skills that a guy like Mark Parrish has always had within him. You know, he developed those skills. He's a very modest guy, but I mean, this is going back to Pee-wees and back to Bantams and at the high school level. You know, Mike Anderson was the most flashy forward on those Jefferson teams, and he was a remarkable player. So was Toby Peterson. But if you really watched the game and watched the details of the game, the way Mark Parrish would play the game without the puck and on the power play, creating space on the half wall, down low, he talked about those battles, and then, yes, in front of the net. I saw some of those same things play out at St. Cloud, and more importantly, when he played in the National Hockey League. And when he was on that power play for the Minnesota Wild, and it's ironic, I think, that he has that unique connection to Dino Ciccarelli, because all of us that fell in love with Dino, and, you know, we're North Star guys like I was back in the late 70s, early 80s, and all the way through that decade. Dino Ciccarelli was an electric player, and one of the things he did was pay the price in front of the net. That was Mark Parrish. And so he's gone on to do great things after leaving pro hockey as a high school hockey coach, but more importantly now as a broadcaster. He's tremendous at what he does. And if you haven't found him on those platforms, the Power Trip morning show at KFan, he's really good. Like, he's really fun. That whole group is spectacular, but he's meant to be calling a hockey game, whether it's in the booth or at the pregame set with our friend Audra Martin and the NHL Network. He brings a wealth of knowledge. What I love about him is he brings the passion. He puts his heart out there and does his thing. Mark Parrish is awesome. Great guest today on Wooden Sticks, and we'd like you to be a part of the show. More than just a listener, tell your family, tell your friends. We need more people to come to this show, and we'd also like to get more sponsors on this show, and Karen Cleary can hook you up. KCLEARY, K Cleary at talknorth.com. The business that you need elevated, we can bring you to a bunch of people. The hockey world supports their own, and Karen Cleary can get that done. Really enjoyed our conversation with Mark Parrish today. Look forward to many more great hockey conversations down the road. Thanks for finding us here at the Talk North Network. This is Wooden Sticks. I'm Kevin Gorg. We'll catch you next time.